Last Sunday morning, just before this worship service, I was back here on about the 34th pew, and three little boys came up. They were the grandsons of Epps and Sheila Robertson. And they came up, and I was talking with them, and I just asked them the question that probably you would normally ask a child. What are you going to get for Christmas? Immediately, one of these little fellows looked at me and said, John Ed, don't you know that Christmas isn't about getting, it's about giving? And then his first cousin said, yes, it's more blessed to give than to receive. They thought they had come to sit and to hear me preach, but I tell you, they did the preaching, and I did the listening, and I've been thinking a lot about that this week. Christmas isn't about what we get. We normally ask, what are you going to get for Christmas, particularly to a child? And to hear three little boys say, hey, Christmas is about giving. And you know, giving gets to be tough. People expect us to give them something, and sometimes they remind us of what we ought to be giving them. There was a fellow that lived in a large condominium complex, and they had a valet parking service for cars. One day, about 2 weeks before Christmas, he came and got in his car. As he did, he noticed something taped to the dashboard, and it said, Merry Christmas from the boys in the garage. And there was a little envelope attached to the bottom of it. Well, he must have been a Methodist because he didn't do anything about that. And about 2 days before Christmas, he got his car again. And again, there was another note there. It said, Merry Christmas from the boys in the garage, second notice. We begin to wonder, what about the note? It's hard to pick the exact right gift. We love gifts. A wonderful lady gave me this tie this past week. I love this. And I heard about a woman that said to her husband, this Christmas, why don't we just give sensible gifts? Like a necktie and maybe a diamond necklace. Just do things. How do you get exactly the right gift? Any of you remember Red Skelton? Are you old enough to remember him? I'll never forget, he told one time, and he said it was the truth, that his secretary had worked overtime, and he asked his wife, I want to give a special gift to her. What can I give? And she said, honey, all women love perfume. Just ask her, what's her favorite fragrance? So he went to her and said, tell me, what's your favorite fragrance? I want to give you a gift. She said, you don't need to do that, but my favorite fragrance is Romantic Thoughts at Midnight. That's my favorite. So Red Skelton goes to the store and goes back to the perfume department, and there he's waited on by a lady that says, can I help you? And he said, yes, ma'am. Do you have Romantic Thoughts at Midnight? She said, look, fella, I have to have a cup of coffee just to stay up past 9 o'clock. How do you get that right, perfect gift? People are expecting it. What do we give? Now, you got 7 shopping days left. Just 7. And I'm not counting today. 7 left. Hey, what are you going to do? What kind of gifts? Christmas is for giving. Let me make some suggestions. I've just listed several categories. And probably all of these categories fit most everybody here. Let me make some biblical suggestions of some gifts to give, and you just got a few days left to do this. First, what would you give to your friends? And let me remind you this about gifts. Do you realize that on the week after Christmas, over 1/3 of all gifts bought are swapped? And do you realize that if you go to yard sales this summer, you'll see a lot of gifts that were given this Christmas that folks just couldn't use? The things I want to suggest this morning won't be swapped the week after Christmas, and they'll never appear at a yard sale. First, to your friends. You've got some friends. It's tough to give a gift to some friends. Lynn and I were talking yesterday, and we've got some friends we're going to see this week. What do you get for people? What's a good gift? Let me suggest a Christ-like relationship. The best gift you could give to a friend is a Christian relationship. Solomon said in Proverbs, there are friends who will destroy each other, but a real friend will stick closer than a brother. Friends, and picking good friends are important. There's a great high-profile football player named Michael Vick. This past week, he was sentenced to 23 months in prison. Let me ask you a question. What if Michael Vick, last Christmas, and a lot of Christmases before it, had some friends that gave him a Christ-like relationship? What if he had been surrounded by some folks who were going to offer him? He wouldn't be going to prison now. The Mitchell report came out on Major League Baseball and the use of steroids this past week. And there were a lot of high-profile names that were mentioned. Let me ask you, what if all of those guys, Clements and Pettit, all of them, what if somebody a few years ago hadn't just given them ties and cars and rings, but instead had just given them a Christ-like relationship? And by the way, it's important for us to choose our friends. Most of us become like our friends, and the best gift we could give is a Christ-like relationship. I never forget reading about a little boy, a third grader, who one night when he came in, his father noticed it. He looked a little troubled, and he went straight back to the bathroom and he closed the door, and the father wondered what was going on, and finally he went back and knocked on the door and opened it, and he said, "What are you doing, son?" And his dad, he had his razor, and he was shaving all the hair off of his head. And the dad had tried to stop him, but most of it was already gone. He said, "What are you doing, son?" He said, "I'm shaving my head." "Why are you doing that?" He said, "Well, you know my buddy Jimmy. Remember that disease he's got? And they've been giving him that medicine for cancer, and it made all his hair come out. And he came back to school today for the first time and said, 'Daddy, the people at school started kidding him. They called him Baldy and Curly.' Jimmy started crying. So I just want to shave my head. Tomorrow I want to stand with him. And I want to tell them to call me Curly and Baldy, but leave my friend alone." Do you think that little boy will ever forget that gift? When you give a gift of a Christ-like relationship where you do something for somebody else that they can't do for themselves, when we encourage people, when we stand by people, when we build people up, that's the best gift we could give to our friends. A second category, to employees. Now, most of you have, and I don't mean you got to own the company, but most everybody here has somebody that works for you. What do you give an employee? Paul said this in Philippians, "Don't be selfish. Give a Christian environment. Don't live to make a good impression. Be humble. To your employees, think of others better than yourself. To your employees, don't think only about your own affairs, but be interested in them too and what they are doing." Employees. Out in Oklahoma City, there's a man named George Gorman Kimmel. He has a big business out in the oil rigs in the fields. A few years ago, when oil wasn't doing so well and they had to lay a lot of folks off in that area, his company, Kimray Incorporated, while everybody else was laying folks off, he said, "I can't do this to my employees." And he went to the mayor of Oklahoma City and said, "Look, I've got a lot of employees and I don't have any work for them to do, but I want to keep paying them. Would you let them volunteer with the city? We've got secretaries that can work. They'll work for free. We got some guys that can help the sanitation department. We got guys that can referee ball games and coach people. Would you just let my people volunteer? I'll pay them, but you find a place for them to work." And the mayor said, "I've never seen anything like this. Why would you do this?" And Gorman Kimball said, "My first job was with a big company, and that company treated employees like they were just materials or some kind of prop. They just looked for the cheapest and the best that they could get, and they didn't care about it. We were just objects. And in my first job, I made the statement, I'll never have anybody work for me, and I don't treat them just like I'd like to be treated." And that's what I'm trying to do right now. How many businesses would do that? You see, at business, at work, is where you spend most of your time. Employees, a Christian environment. This past week, I went to 4 different businesses in town and had a devotional with employees, where management has just said, you don't have to come, it's not mandatory, but to come together, and there are a lot of things they've done, but to offer something that's not just business related. A good gift to employees is a Christian environment. A third area, to customers. Most everybody is in some kind of world in which we have customers or clients. Let me make a suggestion for a good gift. Second mile service. Matthew 5:41, Jesus said, "If a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, carry it 2 miles. Whatever's expected, go an extra mile." Don't tell you, we're living in a society today that doesn't know much about service. How many are old enough to remember that these things out here on the highway, when you drove your car into them, they called them service stations? Now, they're gas stations. And it used to be that when you drove in, they serviced. Well, they pumped the gas, they wiped the windshield. You know, a lot of businesses used to do service. Boy, we've become so bottom line conscious that we've left out service. You want to give a good gift to your customers? Give them second mile service. Do you realize that in America this Christmas, 80% of the gifts given to customers will be the same gift? Somebody in an organization just goes in a magazine and picks out 400 gifts to give and sends them out to all of the customers. Same gift. Let me suggest instead of doing that, offer service. A few years ago, I was with a gentleman. I met him in town, and in the course of our conversation, I asked him, I said, "Where do you go to church?" He said, "Man, I don't go to church." I said, "Well, I'd like to invite you to come to Frazer." He said, "Boy, you don't want me there." I said, "I'm bad." I said, "Well, we got some bad people." He said, "Yeah, but you don't know what I've done. I just couldn't go to church." I said, "I bet we got a lot of folks at Frazer that have done stuff worse than you have. I bet if you came, you'd feel at home." He said, "John Ed, I want to be honest with you." He said, "If I came to your church, the roof would fall in." So I said, "Okay." Well, Chester Williams built this building. His office was right here, not far away. So after I left him, I just went by Chester's. I said, "Chester, do you have an extra hard hat I could borrow? I got a friend that needs one." He said, "Sure," and he gave me a hard hat. I went by the man's office, gave it to his secretary, and just said, "Would you just give this to Mr. So-and-so? He'll know what it's for." The next Sunday morning, back here on the second pew from the back, I noticed somebody walk in with a hard hat. And it was him. And you look up there, the roof didn't fall in. But let me tell you what happened to that man's life. God changed his life, turned him around completely. And he was later transferred, but what made a difference? You see, when he came to church and I'd given him the hard hat, he just put my name on their business list as a customer. And at Christmas, the computer popped it up, and they came and sent me a present. I'll never forget going to the door, and here was a guy standing there, and he said, "I have a gift for you from such and such company." He gave me the gift, and it was in a box about this big, and I was so interested to find out what it was, and when I opened it, it was a bottle of whiskey. One of those designer canisters, you know, like an automobile, and that's what they gave to all the customers, and I guess he didn't know what I was, so they gave it to me. Well, as soon as I thought, I said, "Well, what in the world am I going to do with this? That's like giving a blind man a pair of glasses. I mean, I don't have any need for this." About that time, my young son, Si, said, "Tell you what, let's wrap it back up. And when your daddy comes, Daddy Si, let's give it to him for Christmas." So we had fun rewrapping it and putting it under the tree. My dad and mom came up for Christmas, and on Christmas morning, we went in there to the den. As soon as they got, boy, Si got that from my daddy. My daddy opened it up, and when he got it and looked at it, he didn't know what it was. And his first statement was, "Goodness, this is the largest bottle of aftershave I've ever had in my life." My mother knew what it was and liked the canister. She said, "Let's take it back to Panama City. I want that." That is one of these designer automobile kind of canisters. My dad said, "No way." He said, "If we go back to Panama City and somebody rear ends us, we'd have whiskey all over the car. We'd never be able to explain that." He took it and put it in the trash can. My mama's always been smarter than my daddy, like most women are. I went down to Panama City a couple of months later, and I saw that canister there. My mother had it fixed up. She'd gone in the garbage can, emptied it, and carried it back. You see, everybody on his list got the same gift, and how inappropriate it was. For a customer, the most appropriate gift that you could give is second mile service. And you don't have to throw that in the garbage can. It won't be an embarrassment. Might be the best thing that you've ever done. A fourth thing, your enemies. What do you give to your enemies? Now, every one of us has somebody that's done something wrong to us. At Christmas, what would be a good gift to give to an enemy? Some bad joke? Something that might be harmful to them? Look what Jesus said in Matthew 6. I would suggest giving them sincere forgiveness. Jesus said, if you forgive those who sin against you, your Heavenly Father will forgive you. But if you refuse to forgive others, your Father will not forgive you. Every person here has somebody that you're at odds with. What are you going to give them this Christmas? I would challenge you. Give them sincere forgiveness. It's the only way in which we can really receive forgiveness ourselves. Read what Luke wrote there about the man that had owed $25,000 and the proprietor forgave him. He went and found a man that owed him $10 and he wouldn't forgive him. Listen, in comparison, God has forgiven us $1 million worth. Anything that anybody's done for us is just infinite. It's so small, like a $10 forgiveness. We need to forgive. Nobody's done more to us than we've done to God in our sin. Sincere forgiveness. They say that when two mountain goats meet on a narrow trail and you're up real high and they can't pass each other, they got one or two choices. One, they can butt heads. If they do, they'll knock each other off and they'll either be injured or killed. You know what mountain goats do? Mountain goats, when they meet an impassable situation, one of them will kneel down and let the other step over. It's sad that goats are smarter than people. We'd rather butt heads and everybody gets hurt. But when one humbles and asks for forgiveness, what are you going to give to your enemies? Sincere forgiveness. Another area to your family. What can you give your family? You've probably already talked about now. Now, how much do we spend on each member of the family? What do we give to family members? What can I give children? Let me make a suggestion. Give them a Christian example. That won't wear out. That won't go out of style. That won't need to be swapped next week. Just a Christian example. Philippians 3:7, Paul said, friends, pattern your lives after mine and learn from those who follow my example. A good example. A fellow was telling me the other day about a man that's a friend of his. He's a granddaddy. He lives in Mississippi. He was teaching his grandson about golf. He's a big golfer. He loves golf. And he'd given his grandson some golf clubs. And he one day was with a large group of people. He wanted to show his grandson off. He said, Jimmy, come on and show him how to hit a golf ball. He said, okay. And he went and got his club out and he teed the ball up and took the proper stance, did everything. And when he swung, he missed the ball. Next thing he did, he took his club and wrapped it around the tree and used profanity. Little did that granddaddy realize that while he wanted to teach his son something, what his son really learned was how he acted when the shot didn't go right and the language that he used. He wanted to teach him the mechanics of golf, but that little boy had been watching him. If our kids grow up to be just like us, when you hit your finger with a hammer, how do you react? When things don't go right and the milk is spilt, how do we react? The best thing we could offer to our family is a Christian example. Then a last thing. What can you offer to Jesus? After all, it's his birthday. It's his birthday. It's his party. What can you bring him? I would suggest you. Best thing Jesus wants is me. Now we can give to the children's home, we can give to Angel Tree, we can give to Operation Shoot. We can do all of these things. Jesus doesn't want what we're trying to give away. He wants me. He wants you. He wants us. In Luke 18, Jesus had a man who said, man, I want to follow you. Jesus said, okay, but give me you. Man said, you got me. He said, no, I don't. You're holding on to what you like. You give up what you have and then come follow me. Man said, I can't do that. What does Jesus want more than anything at Christmas? He wants me and he wants you. There was a Sunday school class. The teacher on the week before Christmas asked every kid if they would bring something that was the most precious thing they had, the most important thing in their life, and had a table arranged, and the teacher said, I want everybody to put it on this table for Jesus. And boy, that next Sunday morning, one little boy came and he had a baseball glove. He was an all-star baseball player. And he loved that glove. And he said, I want to give Jesus what's most important. And he put that glove on the table. And there was a girl. She had a baton. She was good in gymnastics, and she had won a lot of trophies and things. And that baton was her. She said, I'm going to give this to Jesus. I worked hard, but I'm going to give it to him. Other kids brought other things. Finally, the teacher looked around, and there's one little boy hadn't come forward. He looked at me and said, Robert, do you have something for Jesus? He said, yes. He said, bring it up and put it on the table. And when the boy started walking up, he didn't have anything in his hands. The teacher just wondered if he had forgotten. What the little boy did, he came up, pulled a chair over by the table. He stepped up on the chair, and he stepped on the table. And he said, I want to give Jesus me. The teacher said, that's the best gift of all. Gloves, trophies, money, time. Hey, what Jesus wants is me. And he wants you more than anything. What can I give him, poor as I am? If I were a shepherd, I'd give him a lamb. If I were a wise man, I'd do my part. What can I give him? I'll give him my heart. Just some suggestions. Let me remind you, over a third of everything you bought this Christmas for somebody is going to be swapped in a couple of weeks, or will be at a garage sale. Many things won't ever be used. But here are just some suggestions. Your friends desperately need a Christ-like relationship. Anybody that works for you desperately needs a Christian environment. Every customer or client you have desperately needs second-mile service. Every enemy needs forgiveness. And let me say, we need it worse than the enemy. Every family member needs a Christian example. What Jesus desires more than anything is me. May we pray. Father, Christmas is about giving. A few shopping days left. May we spend our time on the gifts that really keep on giving. And may we give things folks won't have to swap. And Father, I really believe that every one of us here this morning relates to at least one or two or three of these areas. And maybe all of them. May we look for these gifts. I pray in the name of Jesus, who was the perfect gift from you. In his name, amen. We're going to sing a closing hymn. There's a song in the air. As we do, it's a hymn of invitation. Maybe you've made some decision today you'd like to share, or maybe you'd like to join this church. We're sort of crowded right here. I'm going to stand down here in the very front. And if you come down one of the side aisles, you might need to make your way across the stage or something here. I don't want it to be too much of a handicap. I don't think you can